We have a mid-season review for the Texas men's basketball program, and we discuss whether Shaka Smart has this team on the right track. And the women's basketball program looks to grab a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament. All this and more on College Crossfire.
Yes, we'll get into it. Always enthusiastic, unbelievable, hard-nosed.
All right, let me explain why Aaron Judge is getting it. You can boo me all you want.
I knew Texas was going to win, and then one of the Texas team was going to lose.
Hammy. I don't like the camera.
Oh, wait, you don't like this guy?
All right, I'm done. This is all chaos.
Welcome into College Crossfire. Thank you for being here with us tonight. I'm your host, Jonathan Polasek. Let's go ahead and meet our panelists. We've got our reigning champion from 2 weeks ago, Robert Trevino. Robert, how you doing tonight?
Doing pretty well.
Doing pretty well. Looking for that repeat.
Oh, we'll see if we can get it. And you got a couple guys here that have a lot of experience under their belts.
We do. And moving on, we have Steve Helwick. Steve, how you doing tonight?
Good. How about you?
I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. And of course, in the third chair, because he refuses to sit in any other chair, Sean Hemphill Mapes. Sean, how you doing?
Oh, it's been a while since
It's been a while. It has.
Yeah, big diva move, I know, by me every week, but I'm glad to be here.
Glad to be here. Glad to have you all on tonight. So let's just jump on in. The Texas men's basketball program looks to be on a little bit of an upswing with only 6 games left in the regular season. Winners of 3 of their last 5, including wins over red-hot Baylor and Big 12 powerhouse Kansas, seems to have given Texas a little momentum heading into the final stretch of the season. Texas still has work to do to make the tournament, but have you regained confidence in this team and in head coach Shaka Smart? Let's start with Robert.
Well, after last night's game, I'd have to say a little bit of that confidence has been regained. I know they beat Kansas State earlier in the season, but Kansas State did not have Mike Dean. They had him last night. Kansas State shot great from the floor. Texas did not, and they were still able to play it close, which isn't something you like to say necessarily, but the slate that Texas has coming up is a little more doable than Kansas State, who's really looking like a real contender to take the Big 12 from Kansas this year. So as far as getting to the tournament, I think Texas has a great chance, but we'll have to see whether or not they can make moves once they're in, depending on their seed.
Yeah, they just have to make those small, they have to do the small things right, like Kerwin Roach said after last night's game. Steve, what do you think?
I've regained a lot of confidence since that Oklahoma game in January. You said winners of 3 of their last 5 last night. That's a number 18 team, a really hot team in the Big 12. They just come pull it out at the end, and that was a lot of their shots weren't falling from 3, and all of their drives, Kerwin Roach fell ice cold in the second half, and they weren't getting anything on Kansas State's zone. But they're still a good team. They're still tournament bound. 3 wins in their last 5. They're beating quality opponents. They've proven they can beat anyone in the nation, the UNCs, the Kansases. And then they have Oklahoma State coming up next, which should make it 4 out of their last 6. This team is trending in the right direction that you want to be going into March. And I think guys like Courtney Ramey and Jackson Hayes are developing too as freshmen and stepping up. So Texas is in the right direction that you want them to be right now.
Yeah, they have. They've been able to take care of business against these upper echelon teams, or maybe not necessarily take care of business, but play up to that level that these bigger games require. Sean, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, definitely regained some confidence. I wouldn't say I'm very confident in the team, but I have more confidence than, you know, the 3-game losing streak when you lose to Radford. Don't have a lot of confidence then.
Not at all.
Regained some of that back. Again, all the Big 12 games that they had, they've either won or been close losses. I know for a while it was always within 6. I think all 5 of their losses were within 6 points to start the Big 12 calendar. So yeah, this team is definitely looking better than they did in January, you know, and earlier when they lost to Georgia in the SEC Big 12 Challenge. This team is moving in the right direction. You have all the guys that Steve just said, Jackson Hayes, Courtney Ramey, they're all playing really well. Kerwin Roach bringing the senior leadership that you need when you have a 4-star or a 4-year guy coming back. And Matt Coleman has also really stepped up, has developed a little bit more this year. I thought he was a little disappointing last year. I think now he's kind of the player we expected him to be a little bit more when he stepped on campus last year.
Absolutely. It looks like this team is finally starting to come together and play together, building that chemistry and everything. Robert, I gave you 1 point. Steve, you got 3. Sean, you got 2. So we talked about the freshmen. We talked about the seniors, and those seniors are Kerwin Roach and Dylan Osikowski. They've played important roles for the team this year. So how would you grade them? How would you grade their performances this year? Y'all can jump in at any time now.
Well, I think Kerwin, I think he's done everything you expected of him. So B, just right there. He's been good. He hasn't been A level. I think A level is him just going off, making a leap this year where he's looks like a completely different player. He's just operating at a higher level. I don't think that's been him this year. I think he's a notch below. He's exactly what you really expected from him when he said he was coming back in last year. I think he's really stepped up this year. Osikowski, on the other hand, I think he's taken a step back from where he was last year. I don't really know, C, I guess. I don't want to fail a guy.
He's kind of average.
Yeah,
I mean, he hasn't really looked
been
all
average.
that good.
Yeah, he'll graduate.
He's had some stretches, though, I will say that,
Yeah,
especially on the defensive end.
I mean, let's keep him at a C instead of a D. He's had a couple B games, maybe an A game here or there, but it's mostly been about C.
Steve, Robert?
I'm going to give their senior class a B-. Texas is in a weird state as a program. They're kind of a one-and-done team, kind of not, where they'll have those one-and-done prospects, which means that you really need development out of your seniors, and that's something I don't think we've seen too much of this year, is we haven't seen a senior since really Isaiah Taylor just take command of the team and just become a dominant force offensively. Kerwin Roach is very good driving. I still want to see more out of his jump shooting. He went 0 of 5 from three-point last night. He's very good on the drives, and he's good leading them there, and he's developed some consistency over time. Dylan Osikowski, on the other hand, he's somebody, I'm going to say he's like Texas's Russell Westbrook in the way that he will contribute, and he's good at contributor in all ways except for shooting the basketball.
That is true.
And Osikowski peaked offensively in non-conference play last year, and we still need to see more offensively out of him, but he's been a good rebounder for the team and has contributed in other ways outside of scoring. But overall, you're not seeing too much improvement from last year from the senior class, so I'll say a B-. They're doing their part, but just not more than they did a year ago.
So it's kind of just a little bit disappointing.
And I love the classic Osikowski, Russell Westbrook. I mean, you watch their games, it's looking like the same guy out there.
Exactly.
Teams in the draft have to be thinking they're getting the next Russell Westbrook.
That's on his draft
Absolutely.
express.
Yeah.
Robert, what do you think?
I'm going to have to give him a C for, I think, a lot of the same reasons that Steve gave him a B-. They're kind of filling their role in kind of the output that they're giving. I know Kerwin Roach is obviously the team leader right now, and Osikowski, his output has not been as well as you would expect from a senior. But I think that as a senior class, you kind of have to take up an extra role, and you have to have that step up. And if you don't and increase the kind of impact that you're having, then that is a mark against you. It isn't just a mark that you don't get. And I think it's kind of hard for them to be kind of massive role models for this team when they don't have a single NCAA tournament win, 3 games over 500 for the career, and that also goes along with Shaka as well. So I think the seniors have kind of stepped up their game as far as year to year, but they haven't really increased their output to a level that you would expect from juniors moving up to a senior level. And for that reason, I'll give them a C.
Right, they just haven't just taken over games like you'd think that they would have. So, Robert, I gave you 3 points. Steve and Sean gave each of y'all 2 points. So we talked about the seniors, so let's move on to the freshmen, especially Jackson Hayes and Courtney Ramey. So how would you grade their performances this year?
Well, Steve said in his answer, which I thought I agree with, that Texas isn't quite a one-and-done program where they can breathe. I mean, they try to be Mo Bamba, they try to be with Tristan Thompson, all the way back to Kevin Durant, but they're not actually. It never works out for them. You make one Sweet 16 in like 10 years, it's not working. So I think going after guys like Hayes and Courtney Ramey, it's really a better way of going about it. Guys that I know Jackson Hayes is slotted to go in the lottery. He might go to the draft, but guys like Ramey, where they're a little bit more under the radar, under recruited, where they're not walking on campus being like, I'm only here for a pit stop. I think guys like that can really grow and develop with Shaka. I think those are the kind of guys that Texas should get moving forward. And I think, because of the low expectations they had coming into the season, I think, I'll give them probably an A- because, like, Jackson Hayes was not highly recruited at all. Now he's going to be, a lottery pick. Courtney Ramey, like, I didn't even know he got recruited. He was one of those guys on the roster the first day. You're like, oh, let's see what we got out of him. And he's been a big contributor, I would say, coming off, off the bench. So I had to give him an A-.
I'd have to give Hayes and Ramey definite A's. I think they've definitely overperformed for the role that is expected of them coming onto campus in their first year. And I think that they're a key part of the reason why Texas is where they are right now. I think the senior leadership helped right the ship after those losses to Radford and those 3 straight. But I think after that, they kind of cooled down. Hayes and Ramey were able to increase their output and really give Texas that next boost that I think if they do make it into the tournament, which they should be able to, that they'll be able to have the players necessary to make a run.
Yeah, absolutely. Steve?
I'm definitely giving them an A. Jackson Hayes, I didn't think he was a lottery pick when he was coming onto campus, and he's shown just with his post defense. He's a great shot blocker. He's really athletic. There's so much potential with him. He's not at the point where he can carry Texas to a Sweet 16 or something now, but he has so much potential, and he's a lot of the reason that they've been great this year is just because he's so dominant in the post, mainly on defense. And then Courtney Ramey, I will buy all of your Courtney Ramey stock right now. That guy, he's a hustler. He plays great defense, full court. He picks up the point guard and press. Last night, he had a lot of offensive rebounds and a great reason why they were up at halftime. Now, he didn't play in the final minutes, and I would say that might be a reason where Texas lost because they could have really used him on both sides of the ball, especially defensively. And then offensively, he just went 5 of 6 from three-point at West Virginia. This guy can shoot, too. Courtney Ramey, I'll buy his stock, and I think he'll be Texas's best player 1 year from today.
Yeah, I think it was kind of disappointing that you didn't see him at the end of the Kansas State game. Shaka Smart said he wanted to leave Jace in there because if he believed that if Jace caught fire, then he could really propel Texas to a win. So, Robert, you got 2, Steve 3, Sean 3. Really quickly, so do y'all think that Texas makes the tournament this year, and just about how high can they go? Real quick.
I think they'll lose in the first round again.
First round, okay.
First round, not getting past the first weekend, but they're a 9 or 10 seed.
Okay.
I don't think they make it to the tournament.
Not making it to the tournament. Okay. Well, that's it for now. When we return, we're talking about the NBA trade deadline and the new Alliance of American Football. Stick around.
You just do.
Welcome back to College Crossfire. Let's remind everybody of the score. We've got Robert with 6, Steve in the lead with 8, and Sean with 7. Still anybody's game. But we started the show talking about men's basketball. We're moving on to the women's side. The women's basketball team is currently ranked 15th in the nation according to the AP polls and sit at 20-5 overall and 2nd in the Big 12 behind Baylor. However, when the first women's basketball tournament reveal came out, Texas was left out of the top 16 overall seeds. Baylor and Iowa State were the only Big 12 teams to make the cut. With 5 regular season games left, as well as the Big 12 tournament, will Texas be a top 16 seed when it's all said and done? So let's start with Robert.
I say for sure. You look at Karen Aston's experience, I think this team definitely being left out of the top 16 is going to leave a huge chip on their shoulder. You look at the 2 Big 12 teams that made it, Baylor and Iowa State. Texas had a great game against Baylor, fell a little short. Meanwhile, they beat Iowa State, and they're going to play both of those teams again. They have great chances to win. I think they have to win one of those 2 games, as well as finishing out the rest of their season with wins. But they have to beat either Baylor or Iowa State to make the top 16 teams, and I think they will. Yeah,
they played both. They played Baylor very close at the end. They made that miraculous comeback, just fell a little bit short, and then a close win against Iowa State. It'll be tough for sure, but should be interesting to watch how it plays out. Steve?
I'm going to say no because if they're not in it now and they have Baylor, Iowa State on the schedule, and they'll probably meet one of them in the Big 12 tournament, I don't think that they're going to rise back up in there. And this team doesn't have some of the experienced veterans like Brooke McCarty and Ariel Atkins they had last year. So I'm going to say no, they do not rise back up in there.
All righty, Steve's saying no. Sean?
Yeah, right now they're 15th in the AP poll, so you think, well, top 16 seed right there. But that's not really how the tournament works. They depend on a lot of things. RPI is one of them. And right now they're 29th in RPI. That's not looking good. So I think right now they're a bubble team in the sense of like getting into the top 16. And like Robert said, if they can just take one off of Baylor, I think even if they beat Iowa State and lose to Baylor twice, I don't think they're a top 16 team. But if they take one off Baylor, I think they'll host the first round game.
Okay, so Steve and Sean are saying no. I'm saying yes, so I'm giving Robert the point because they have Baylor and Iowa State left in the regular season, and then they could potentially meet one or both in the Big 12 tournament, especially I think if they beat Iowa State in the regular season and then in the tournament, I think they really have a good shot. Yes, there is the Baylor buzzsaw. But,
Yeah, if they lose to Baylor twice.
but I still think that would be enough to get them through. So, Robert, you're getting the point. The NBA trade deadline has come and gone. With it came a flurry of moves all across the league as teams look to either try and win now or prepare for the future. Some big names came up during the trade deadline, including Anthony Davis, who is still with the Pelicans. Other big names like Marc Gasol, Tobias Harris, Kristaps Porzingis, and Markelle Fultz are all on new teams. So who won this year's trade deadline? Let's start with Steve.
I feel like everyone's going to say the 76ers. They got Tobias Harris, I understand that, but you need depth, and that is exactly what the Toronto Raptors got at the deadline. Toronto retains its depth, and they were better than Philly right before the deadline as they crushed them in that nationally televised TNT game. You add Marc Gasol, who is a former Defensive Player of the Year, an excellent passer, can score. Last night, coming off the bench, he had 16 points, 7 of 9 shooting. Marc Gasol has already worked wonders on Toronto. Huge upgrade from Valanciunas, who had been hurt and not been playing up to his standard for much of the year. And all you lose is C.J. Miles and DeLon Wright. And guess what? At the end of the trade deadline, in a move that went under the radar, they also add Jeremy Lin, which is a good source of bench scoring, someone who will always guarantee you 10 to 14 points a game off the bench. Toronto now has depth. They have great defense in their lineup. They have guys like Danny Green, Kawhi Leonard, Marc Gasol. These are all defense team guys we're talking about. Pascal Siakam's in line for most improved player. I'm buying the Raptors right now. Marc Gasol, they win the trade deadline.
Yeah, this team was already scary before they traded for Marc Gasol. Now even more so. Sean?
Yeah, definitely the Gasol and the Lin deals with Toronto. But I'm going to go with the Bucks adding Nico Mirotic at the trade deadline. You just saw it when he was on the Pelicans last year. He really opens up the floor. He's a good guy on a playoff team who doesn't need the ball to score, to be effective. Is another guy that opens up the court for Giannis. So you have Giannis, Chris Middleton. I always thought that the Bucks kind of needed another guy that you feel good about in the playoffs. They got it with Nico Mirotic, and I really think that his shooting, again, how big he was in the Blazers series against with the Pelicans last year, I think Mirotic is really going to step up.
Yeah, I think he fits perfectly in that system just to allow Giannis to
with
just
Bud.
go wild.
Yeah.
Exactly. Robert?
By the way, Steve, I love the plug for TNT you had there. I'm going to be the guy Steve was talking about. I'm going to say the 76ers, and for this reason only. I feel like every team in the East is preparing for the Golden State Warriors, and you look at the top two kind of teams that have the best chance. I mean, that made moves at the deadline, the Raptors and the 76ers. I think the 76ers were able to fill out that last spot that they needed. They obviously did drop a game to the Raptors, but if it gets to the end of the year and that's the series they're playing, they're going to have to get over them anyway. And I think that addition to Tobias Harris, while also solving the Markelle Fultz, what are we going to get for him problem, is something that is going to give them a chance against the Warriors at least. Maybe they can lose in 5.
Yeah, but they still have to get there.
Yeah.
They still have to get there, and
They have to go through the Bucks.
There's actually a lot of good teams in the East this year.
They're 1-7 against the Bucks, the Raptors, and the Celtics this year, and they lost to the Celtics last night. They have to get through the East to get to the finals.
Yeah, the East isn't the cakewalk that it used to be. Steve, you're getting the point. I really think the Raptors, they just made the most improvement without giving up so much. 76ers I think gave up too much. And I think
You just hate Nico Mirotic.
No, not at all. Not at all. But Steve, you're getting the point. The NFL season may have ended with the Patriots winning the Super Bowl, but that doesn't mean football is over. The Alliance of American Football, or AAF, began its first season this last weekend. While it is still football and similar to how the NFL runs things, the AAF has made some changes. For example, teams can't kick extra points, and there are no kickoffs. Teams have to start at the 25-yard line after a score. And while the AAF is fun and exciting, can it really challenge the NFL to be America's premier football league? Let's start with Sean.
No, nothing can compete with the NFL. Nothing on television outrates the NFL. So in that sense, I don't think it's ever going to happen like that. But I think they can be a relevant league. I think, what they're doing with going to markets that don't have NFL teams and just kind of banking on the college nostalgia, I think that works for a little while. But you have to remember the XFL, when it debuted about 15 years ago, it rated highly its first weekend. So, I don't think it can compete with the league. It can really just do stuff where it's like, they can take guys straight out of high school and then play for 3 years and then go to the NFL. That's really the only chance they have of like a long-term success in my book.
It just gives people and fans and players another option.
Yeah.
Robert?
Well, the AAF is not trying to compete with the NFL. They've marketed themselves as kind of the NFL's G League. And Bill Polian, one of the guys who was instrumental in creating the league, former Colts GM. So I think the AAF definitely has a good chance to survive because of the way that the football, there are some rule changes, but it's not the gimmicky kind of style that people don't like to see from the XFL, or the original iteration of the XFL. So I think the AAF has a definite chance of sustaining its power that we saw from week 1. And obviously week 1, the offensive schemes are going to be really simplistic. But I think as the league goes on and players kind of stay, players kind of fold into the NFL, you're definitely going to see an increase in quality and therefore kind of an increase in just the value of the product.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, because you'll have these NFL players or people who will could eventually go to the NFL or come from the NFL. And so the product, like you said, is not finished right now, but it could be something greater. Steve?
The AAF, I don't think, is designed at all to compete with the NFL. This is something where we just want to see some rule changes to maybe put in the NFL, like more transparency from the officiating. And I think people were sort of interested to see what it is, so they tuned into week 1. But when you're promoting your stars being Christian Hackenberg and all that, the luster is going to die after a while. Week 5, nobody's going to watch a San Diego Fleet versus Birmingham Iron game. It's going to die down.
Yeah, I don't think that it has the ability to have this sustained success. I don't think it'll ever compete with the NFL. So, Sean, I'm giving you the point. So that's it. Great debate, guys. That's it for now. We've got Rapid Fire coming up next. Stick around. Welcome back to College Crossfire. It's time for Rapid Fire, but let's go ahead and remind everybody of the score. We got Robert with 7, Steve with 9, and Sean with 8. So it's still anyone's game because in Rapid Fire, each question is worth 2 points, and you can jump in at any time. So Bryce Harper and Manny Machado, 2 of the best players in the MLB, still remain unsigned as spring training has begun. These are 2 players that could command record deals wherever they sign, but they have yet to sign with anyone. Similar to last offseason where the biggest stars weren't signed until late into spring training. However, it's time to put on your GM hats. So how much money and for how many years would you offer to sign Machado and Harper?
I think Machado, I think I like Machado a little bit more than Harper. Third base and shortstop, if he wants to play shortstop, those are more high-value positions than a corner outfielder just in general. And he's also put up some more consistent numbers. So I would basically just name your price. I don't know why he hasn't been signed yet. Probably like 8 years and doing some like napkin math right now. I'm trying not to say something like outrageous.
This is Rapid Fire. It's time for outrageous.
Yeah, 360.
All right.
There you go.
All righty, Robert, Steve?
I'm definitely handing Machado a blank check here. It's another surprise to me. I think the one thing I would say that would be a little questionable is that I'm not handing Harper really a check at all.
Whoa,
I think
okay.
that, well, if I'm a GM, I obviously can't sign both of these guys without obviously my owner telling me, what are you doing, man? So Machado, for sure, I'm handing him a blank check. Harper, I'll pass.
We'll pass on Harper. Blank check for Machado. Steve?
If I had to decide between the 2, I'll go with Machado. I feel like he has more of can bring me to a World Series better than Harper, as the Nationals always choke. And
That is true.
I'll do a 1 year, see how it works
A
out.
1 year?
Prove it.
All righty. I like that. A prove it year. How much would you sign him for that 1 year?
I don't know how much money I have. Am I the Pirates or the Yankees?
You can just give me a number.
Padres.
I'll say $15 million.
15 million? Okay, I'm not a fan of that. So, Sean, you're getting the 2 points. I think 8 years, 360 for Machado. Yeah, I value Machado
I was just
more.
trying to make sure that isn't like $40 million
Eh,
a year.
It happens. It happens. So, Sean, you're getting the 2 points. Moving on, the AAF currently has 8 teams in its league, including one 80 miles down I-35 from here in Austin. Each team has its own nickname. For example, San Antonio is known as the Commanders, while Arizona is known as the Hotshots. If you could name an AAF team for your hometown, what would it be? And it's got to be for your hometown. I don't know where any of y'all are from, but just give me a name.
Hi, I'm Sean Mapes. I'm from Houston,
Okay,
Texas.
thank you.
I feel like it's an icebreaker.
A little bit.
I'll go with the, let's see, it's got to be something, defines a city, something that hasn't been used before. So I'm going to go with the Houston Oilers.
Okay,
I don't think
yeah.
that's ever been used before.
Nah, it doesn't ring any bells.
Get the baby blues out there.
Yeah.
Bring back the Oilers, baby.
Yeah, I like that.
I was born in Bear, Delaware, and my team's going to be called the Bear Grills.
Oh, okay, I like that. I like that a lot.
Sponsored by George Foreman.
Yes. There we go. There we go.
Get the
Robert?
sponsors out. I'm Robert Trevino. I'm from Lubbock, Texas. I'm going to go with the Lubbock Flatlanders. If you've been there, I think that the tallest part is the little highway for 10 seconds. So I'm going Lubbock Flatlanders.
Lubbock Flatlanders. Okay. I like the Delaware Bear Grylls sponsored by George Foreman. So, Steve, you're getting the 2 points. Moving on, last rapid fire of the night. Kyler Murray has made a decision. He decided that he's going to play football instead of baseball. He was selected 9th overall in the MLB draft by the Oakland A's, but he's also projected to be a first-round pick in the NFL draft. Not many athletes have the option to play 2 different sports, but Murray is one of the exceptions. So if you had to choose any sport to be a first-round draft pick, which sport would you choose and why?
Well, I would take, I think I'd take the NFL money because it's the biggest check up front, and I stink at all these sports. So just give me as much money, much guaranteed money as I can get on the front end, and then when I wash out before the games start, I'll be good on a couple $1 million.
The immediacy of the money.
Straight
Okay.
cash on.
I think I'd take the NBA. Cash, I know it'd be a little bit smaller, but hopefully I'm like the 20th pick, and they want me to develop, so I can just kind of sit on the bench, maybe sign an extra contract extension here and there, average like 2-3 points off the bench.
Okay.
Energy guy.
Okay.
I'll be NBA. I'll try to rig my combine to be 30th overall, go to the Warriors, get that ring.
Okay, okay. Steve wants to get the ring. Robert sitting on the end of the bench. I'm going to go with Robert getting the 2 points because you sit on the end of the bench, you don't have to play, don't risk injury, and still make a couple $1 million every year. But Steve was leading when we started this. He had the most points, and Steve ended up with 11, Robert with 9, Sean with 10. So, Steve, you are our champion. Do we have time for FaceTime? We do. Steve, go ahead.
There was big news today. My guy Joe Flacco was traded from the Baltimore Ravens to the Denver Broncos. It's the end of an era, and I'm here to defend Joe Flacco and tell you why he's an excellent quarterback. His numbers are better than Hall of Famer Joe Namath. He has the best postseason of all time. No interceptions, 12 touchdowns. He has a Super Bowl MVP. Joe Flacco has a top 5 throw in NFL history. Joe Flacco is pure greatness, and if you can't hate Joe Flacco, if you hate Joe Flacco, you just can't appreciate greatness. End of story. Flacco to the Hall of Fame.
All right, I'm all in on Joe Flacco now. Well, that's all the time that we have for tonight. Congratulations to our winner, Steve Helwick. Make sure to tune into our sister show, College Press Box, on Mondays at 9:30 p.m. And be sure to join us again next Wednesday at 9. Don't forget to follow at TSTV Sports on social media. And for all the panelists and everyone in studio and Master Control, I'm Jonathan Polasek. Have a wonderful evening.
We've had trouble the last couple times.